Thank you, Dr. Kumar, for considering me to be part of this instructional course. I've always enjoyed doing this. I think you will be instructional courses. My first instructive case is a case of post-operative uveitis, and what time it took and what it took to solve this mystery. No financial disclosures. This is a story of a 44-year-old female who came to us with a history of diminution of vision for distance in both eyes. She had floaters in the right eye. Her main complaint was actually floaters, which are underlined there. Her vision was 6/9 and 6 in each eye. She had thin posterior subcapsular cataracts in both the eyes, and the fundus did show vitreous opacities in the right eye, but otherwise it was relatively normal. So because of the cataract, without giving much importance to the symptoms of floaters, we did a phaco foldable, silicone foldable IOL for her in the right eye, which was supposedly uneventful. She was fine on the day 2. When she came back on day 9, she did have floaters still, and she also started complaining of occasional pain in the right eye. At that time, the vision was 6/9 and N6, not better than what her pre-operative visual acuity was. But we noted that there was a PCR. I'm sorry I don't have a photograph of the segment of this patient, but this PCR was there but was not mentioned in the operation notes. The surgeon who had operated had not mentioned that there was a PC rent during the surgery. On fundus examination, she had vitreous opacities inferiorly, which, because of the pre-existing floater history that she gave before surgery, was diagnosed as vitreous hemorrhage, presumably due to PVD. So it was diagnosed as a PVD-induced vitreous hemorrhage and passed off as vitreous hemorrhage. On subsequent follow-up, she came on first month, second month. Thereafter, she was seen again on the 4th month. Each time she was unhappy. Each time she was complaining of some heaviness in the eye. The floaters still persisted, but irritability and heaviness in the eye was something that she had continuously been complaining about. On the 5th month follow-up, she was found to have, apart from the floaters and the heaviness in the eye, intraocular pressure rise up to 52 millimeters of mercury, which was, however, controlled medically within a short time. And when she came back at the 7th month follow-up, her IOP was controlled without any medication. See, a patient with a simple cataract had to keep coming to us for 7 months until now, until this slide. You will see further how many more times she has come. Still, she was not happy. The floaters were still persisting, and on fundus examination, resolving vitreous opacities were there. It was no longer looking like a hemorrhage now, it was looking like retained lens fragments. So, on the basis of the diagnosis of a retained lens fragment in the eye causing uveitis, so we gave her posterior subcutaneous triamcinolone as an empirical treatment or as a stopgap treatment, and she had temporary relief with that. Finally, she was seen by me on the 10th month follow-up. Till the 10th month, I had not seen this patient. She was being followed up by the juniors, and I decided that since she had had enough, we should do a vitrectomy and get rid of this causative factor of the retained lens fragments. And I did not do this vitrectomy. It was actually done by my colleague, and this was done with a wide-angle lens with good visualization of the periphery. And after clearing all the fragments that had dropped into the vitreous cavity, we had given her an IVTA also. Thereafter, she was better. So that is the happy ending of case 1. But there are question marks after that. The actual story starts now. The patient came back 1 month after the surgery for vitreous removal of the vitreous fragments, lens fragments from the vitreous cavity, and she came back. When she came back, she had a recurrence of uveitis. The vision had dropped all along when she had suffered us for 9 months. She had maintained 6/9 and 6, but now she had a drop in vision after the vitrectomy. And on OCT, she had this cystoid macular edema with subfocal fluid. And then we saw in detail with depression and found that this small piece of nuclear fragment was stuck to the pars plana region. There is no way to photograph this. That is why I put a schematic drawing there. And then she underwent surgery for removal of this small fragment of the nucleus which was stuck to the pars plana region, which was very difficult to visualize throughout those 10 months that she underwent the suffering, and it was also not possible to see this without depression. It was just a matter of chance that somehow we could at least see this and localize this at the 10th month follow-up. So we had to do a bimanual surgery for her because the surgeon had to depress in order to gain access to this fragment. Sorry about the video. And because this was close to the ora serrata, the fluid exchange with cryotherapy to the peripheral retina was done, and finally her OCT came back to normal foveal contour, and the vision was restored to 6/6 and 6. And this is when I can say that it was indeed a happy ending. But what were the lessons from the case that we learned? We have to respect and address the complaints of the patient. The patient came to us with floaters, whereas because we saw the cataract, we jumped into doing the cataract surgery. This is something which we have to remember. Even if the patient has cataract, whatever the patient complains of, I think we should address that first. If we have a complication, the anti-segment surgeon who did the surgery should not conceal a complication just because he feels that it has passed off without any event. That is, although there was a PCR, probably he felt that it was okay to just pass it off as uncomplicated or uneventful, which is wrong. So we should practice a honest documentation. In fact, whenever there is a PCR, we should actually document what actually happened along with the PCR. We should make a note of how much vitreous was lost, how much of nuclear fragments went back, whether the epinucleus went back or not. And this has to be passed on. This information has to be passed on to the vitreoretinal surgeon for him to be able to actually expect and anticipate what to do. And a depressed peripheral examination, I think, is a must in all cases of postoperative uveitis. You might be dealing with nuclear fragment retained in the pars plana region, as in this case. So in all cases of postoperative uveitis, maintain a high index of suspicion for nuclear fragments. This is the message that I want to give across to you. My case 2 is about an 8-year-old boy cross-referred with dilated pupils. He came with a history of sudden decrease in vision in the left eye of 8 days duration. He had occasional pain and redness lasting 2 months, and his vision was 6/24 partial in the affected eye. Slit lamp examination showed AC cells 3+. The fundus picture representation was not very clear to take a photograph of it. So this is a schematic drawing. This is the left eye, actually should have been on that side. You can see that there was the fibrous band passing superiorly from the optic disc for about 2 disc diameters superiorly. There was vitreous hemorrhage, and through the vitreous hemorrhage we could see that the peripheral vessels showed exudative sheathing or cuffing. Retrospective history, nothing forthcoming. There is no history of trauma. So this patient was diagnosed as having vasculitis, empirically started on oral steroids and topical steroids, and sent for investigations, the usual vasculitic workup that we do for this age group of patients we sent him for. At 1 week of follow-up after the starting of steroids, this patient had a mild clearing of vitreous hemorrhage. The disc, the fibrosis that was extending from the disc superiorly was better seen now, and peripheral vascular sheathing also was better seen, and the vision was still low at 6/24 part. So we decided to treat him empirically with, since the investigations had come normal, we thought that we should treat him with a row of anterior retinal cryotherapy for the vasculitis and the vitreous hemorrhage that had ensued following the vasculitis. We treated him with ARC. 1 week post ARC of the inferior or periphery, the vision was restored by 1 line. There was a clearing of vitreous hemorrhage, and at 6 weeks the vision came back to 6/9 with good clearing of the vitreous hemorrhage. That means there was a vasculitis which was a causative factor for the vitreous hemorrhage, and with the cryotherapy there was a resolution. So at that time we saw that there was a floating foreign body seen in the inferior retina. There were the peripheral cryomarks which we had induced, and we decided that this could probably be a case of an retained intraocular foreign body, although it was also in our mind that this could have been a nematode. So this is a case of an intraocular foreign body masquerading as retinal vasculitis. So with this in mind, we thought, now that we know the cause, we should go in and remove this foreign body. So surgery was undertaken 7 weeks after presentation. Intraoperatively, what we saw was that this site of entry was missed all along the first 6 weeks, and this track of cataract, or the track of the foreign body in the lens, had been missed. The entry wound and the localized cataract had not been noticed by us because the patient came with dilated pupils. I will tell you why we missed this. And this is the surgery which we did for removal of the foreign body. A small piece of foreign body, about 2 to 3 millimeters in size. It was not measured accurately, but then that is a foreign body which came easily with the 23 gauge cannula itself, with the forceps. So retrospective history, boy would play regularly at a functional car garage. He was from a rural background, and there was a tractor and a car mechanic next door, and that is where he used to go and play. It was an open area where boys used to go and play, and that is where he probably sustained the injury. At 4 weeks follow-up, his vision was 6/6, and fundus was stable like this picture you see here. But this is where the site of foreign body ricocheting was. When we saw the fibrous tissue on day 1, we did not wonder why this was there. There was this vasculitis, there was a vitreous hemorrhage, there was uveitis, but we didn't bother to find out or did not worry much about this fibrous tissue band, which is so common in intraocular foreign bodies, which usually develops between the site of ricocheting or site of impact of the foreign body and the disc. So what is instructive about this case? We should include a social history, a proper history where he goes to play. Even a boy who, you see, a bystander on the road or anywhere where work is going on. We have had cases where people have sustained injury while watching the road metalling, that is asphalting on the road, where they sometimes hit the stone. So such being the case, we should, I think, include a detailed history. Maintain a low threshold for EUA in children. See, what has happened is, this boy has come to us. We have not. He has come from another department, from the anti-segment department, with dilated pupils. So we thought we should look only into the fundus. So a detailed examination is mandatory. Even if it's a boy, if he is not cooperative, you should probably cajole him and try to see the rest of the findings, try to elicit all the findings that are possible to get in these children. Even during the cryotherapy that we did, which was under anesthesia, the anti-segment findings were missed. We just went in, saw, because we were biased that this was a vasculitis, we thought we should do the cryo. We didn't bother to see the anti-segment. It's actually a confession. This is probably a side effect of super specialization. So we should see the eye as a whole, the patient as a whole, and treat accordingly. So with this, I think, in any unexplained uveitis, we should consider foreign body as well. Thank you very much.